Hey everyone, welcome to the PublishPress podcast. I'm Steve Burge from PublishPress, and I've got Dan with me. Hey Dan.
Hey Steve, I'm Dan Knauss from Multidots, and joined Steve today with Andy Dehnart of Reality Blurred.
So Andy covers reality TV, and he's done for 25 years now. And I reached out to him for the podcast because he's been a PublishPress customer for a long time, and I was really inspired by the work he's doing. He's been an independent publisher for 25 years now. So he's seen the whole rodeo from Blogger to movable type and now to WordPress. Dan, you were interested in this topic as well. I'm seeing Andy's work.
Yeah, I've actually taken some sites, publishing sites through that same journey over that same period. I think some of my oldest experience that eventually ended up on WordPress had a similar journey. And I was really interested in how that's developed a community of followers. And it sounds like he's adopting the membership model for going beyond monetizing with advertising, but working with a really closely engaged community, and how he has managed a really healthy comment culture so far, which is a rare thing. I'm a fan of comments on blogs and sites, but few people want to do them.
Awesome. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation. We're talking with Andy from realityblurred.net. Hey, Andy, welcome to the PublishPress podcast.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here and to chat with you both.
I think congratulations are in order. You run Reality Blurred, and you're approaching 25 years of publishing now.
Yeah, it's incredible, and a milestone I never imagined I would get to, because I don't think I ever imagined I would get to a year, even when I started the blog back in July of 2000.
I'm struggling to remember too many publications that have lasted 25 years online. What's different about it? Is it's your passion for the topic, or are you making so much money that you just want to keep going?
I wish it. Well, it hasn't for most of its life. It has not been a money earner. Probably like most children, it just consumes a lot of resources and doesn't give anything back, at least at first. It's a good question, because I don't really have a secret other than it's always been guided by what I'm interested in and how I'm thinking in the moment and what I care about. And that's not to say I haven't occasionally followed trends or tried to feed the SEO or Google or social media machine an algorithm in some way. Most of those experiments have failed. And it's mostly, I think, just me doing what's interesting to me. And that's certainly changed a lot. Like in those very early days, back before we had reliable search engines, or certainly long before social media. And I was just kind of scouring the corners of the internet to find every morsel of information I could about reality TV, and then linking to it and leaving some light commentary and a little bit of snark along with it. And clearly now that's not what I do. And it's also not something that's needed in the same way, just because so many people cover reality TV and it's become so much more mainstream. So, pivoting away from that, although I never thought of it as a pivot, it probably allowed me to continue for this long, because I'm, again, kind of just following what's interesting. So I started writing longer reviews, doing episodic recaps, just the kind of stuff things I wanted to experiment with and try. And maybe I'll try some experiments and they won't work, and I'll move on and try something else. I think that is the solution to any longevity of a project, is just being able to play with it and be able to experiment and see what you like and what works.
It's still fun after 25 years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would be lying if I said that it wasn't work sometimes or frustrating. And there's certainly mornings or moments where I'm just like, I don't want to do anything right now, but I know I kind of have to. But I also think that's just life and work in general. But for the most part, it's a lot of fun. And I love being able to digest what I'm seeing on stream and gather information through interviews and reporting and share it out with readers and then talk to them about it. It's just a point of privilege and a lot of fun.
What is the special thing about this topic that grabs you? I've read a bit of your work, seen a few of your interviews before, and you seem to use it almost as we're talking about reality TV here. You seem to use reality TV as a like a reflection of our society almost. That
Yeah,
we
for
see
sure.
we see real people up on the TV, often in real, quasi-real situations. What is it about this topic, this particular topic, that's kept you going?
Yeah, I mean, I think real people are endlessly interesting to me. Just on, it's in the same way that I think we all are kind of gossipy, maybe, or want to know what our neighbors are doing, or uh, there's that kind of sense in it, a little bit of voyeurism and being allowed to peek into other people's worlds. And it's also that, like, I can sit behind my TV screen in my living room, safe and comfortable, and I can watch people on an island playing basically a human game of chess. I can watch, volunteers who are inexperienced and don't know what they're doing on a boat in the middle of the Arctic Ocean, battling whaling ships, trying to get them to stop whaling. And I could do that. I could do that from the safety again of my living room. So it's just being able to kind of enter other people's lives, learn about them, see what's going on. And I think it's impossible to separate that from just how I got started in reality TV, which was watching The Real World back in the 1990s when I was a teenager. And the people on The Real World were nothing like the people in my classes or at school, in part because I was in a very white suburban neighborhood, and like there was not the kind of diversity either culturally or backgrounds or experience that people have on that show. And so it was a window for me into seeing other people. And also just as a closeted gay kid, I was seeing gay characters kind of living an authentic life. And that was something that was kind of fascinating and horrifying all at once. So I think that kind of core interest has just spread out to all the genres, whether it's competition TV or shows like Below Deck, which are kind of still showing us people doing their jobs and living their lives.
Well, yeah, I hadn't quite thought about it that way, but reality TV has kind of melted into mainstream. You have behind you, you've got a relic from The Office. So lots of scripted TV almost has come to resemble reality TV.
Yeah. Documentary style. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like the show Lost, you may remember that was directly a result of an executive saying, like, basically give me a version of Survivor. And
Okay.
they did that. And The Office, the cinematographer on The Office got his start on Survivor. So filming real people and a lot of the things we might not even notice. For example, the fact that like when you see really intimate conversation on The Office, the camera operator's far away from people to kind of make us feel like we're really peeking in. That's something he learned on reality TV too, is if you race up to two people who are having a private conversation, they might kind of stop or get weird about it. And so keeping some distance. So yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, reality TV's effect on our culture is undeniable. It's just everywhere. Like you said, in scripted TV, obviously in politics, it's everywhere.
Even thinking about what my kids watch, my kids are teenagers now, watching what they watch on YouTube, things like what Mr. Beast does. There's big overlap with, I mean, he literally has reality TV style game shows on his channel, right?
Yep,
Right.
absolutely. Yep. And that's the same, I think, too, probably, like, not to speak for your kids, but I'm guessing they are drawn to certain people. They like watching them do, whether it's like the kind of stunts that Mr. Beast does, or just maybe even kind of talking to the camera about their lives. Like, all of that is like clearly just us kind of creating our own reality TV shows and playing it online. So it's almost like everyone is a reality TV star in some ways now, which is amazing. Also way too much for me to ever possibly cover.
Oh, okay. Everyone is a reality TV star now, I guess. That's true.
Just keep the camera going and add it to the podcast.
One of my kids at one point had an app where once a day they would share a photo of themselves to their friends. That's quite a minor bit of sharing, but the vast numbers of people who upload vast numbers of images of themselves all the time, there's a lot of truth in that. We're all basically living in the real world now, or Survivor, depending how you...
Yeah, exactly. Depending upon the day or your circumstances.
Okay, that really does a good job of explaining the fascination, why it's interesting to you. can I ask you a bit about the business? How has a blog like yours, a publisher like yours, made money over the last 25 years? I'm sure it's been lots of changes and ups and downs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say for at least half of its life, I need to actually do the math now. But it was, at least a solid 10 years of nothing in terms of revenue. I can't remember exactly when I added AdSense ads on, but that was kind of my first foray into maybe monetizing this. And of course, at the time, maybe even now, AdSense was like pennies literally. And it was like cool to see like $1 or two show up from just like, I didn't have to do anything. There was. But before that, I mean, I think the answer really to your question is that I had full-time day jobs beforehand. When I started the site, I was working at a .com in Chicago. I went on to teach at a university, and although I was a lecturer or teaching 3 classes and not really doing much else, this was something I did like before my job, after my job, on the weekends. And so I didn't think of it as the primary thing that I was doing. In fact, I did a lot of freelancing, especially in the 2000s and 2010s. So that was a source of income as well. So it was almost like it became kind of, in that way, it became a marketing tool. And I guess it made money for me in that way. Like I wrote a couple of stories for Playboy, and the editor there actually was a blog reader, and he reached out to me to say, hey, like we have the story that we're interested in. And like that was a huge journalistic win for me. Just like to be part of that legacy was pretty cool, and obviously the site made that possible.
Was it a reality TV article you wrote for them?
Yep, it was. Both of them. The first one was about people on reality TV and sort of the mental health effects that it was having at the time. And then the second one, I reported actually from on board one of Sea Shepherd's ships up in the Faroe Islands for the TV show Whale Wars that I referenced earlier. So yeah, both of those were about reality TV. And most of the writing that I was doing throughout those that the freelancing was reality TV related as well. So yeah, in terms of that monetization, like again, it's sort of with ads started very like kind of trickling in slowly. And then I kind of bounced around from ad company to ad company trying to find ones that worked. And like, it was making some decent money and maybe enough to like afford to help me go on a reporting trip. In 2008, I went to ascend myself or paid for myself to go to on location with Survivor in Gabon, which is in Central Africa. And, I bought myself a $3,000 plane ticket, and that was like, maybe the site made $3,000 that year. I can't remember exactly, but like, it was like, that's the kind of thing maybe I was able to kind of cover those expenses, and that was it. So yeah, I think again, just kind of looking like mostly it's been display ads in terms of revenue. And a while back, I think maybe 6 years now, maybe a little more, maybe 7, I found Mediavine, or Mediavine found me. And just as a company, an ad company founded by other publishers, they really had figured this out, and both in terms of like having high quality ads that weren't super annoying or intrusive, and that actually went, like didn't make the page slow down to a crawl, and then also actually brought in revenue. So, and it started bringing in enough revenue to where like I was making more doing this than I was doing teaching, and so which may say something about teacher salaries also, but
hey, I'm guilty. Ex-teacher here couldn't make enough money.
yeah, exactly. It is.
I've
too,
been a lecturer myself and writing instructor. So I know exactly what you mean.
Yep. So, just very fortunate that like that worked out. And since then, I've especially tried to kind of start diversifying of like, there's some affiliate revenue and some member supported. It's actually one of my goals for the new year is to like kind of find new ways to bring in more people for direct reader support for those who can. I realize that's not everybody, but those readers who can, like, I just did a reader survey, and a lot of readers didn't even know that there was a way to support if they wanted to. So that was something that I found interesting, and just want to make that like a little more possible, because ad revenue, like everything else, is dependent on factors outside my control. So I want to make sure my cats can still eat at night.
Hey, have you captured any of those audience in a newsletter or a Facebook group?
Yeah, I have a newsletter that's been around for a while, and I have about, I think, 3,800 people on it right now. So it is not a massive list, but it's also a list of like pretty solid um, fans of reality TV, of my work, of the kind of conversations that we like to have around reality TV. I do have social media presences, not anymore on the site formerly known as Twitter, as I've left. Um, so I definitely try to meet people where they are also. But in terms of like the community, I try to keep that actually on Reality Glare as much as possible instead of kind of letting that belong to a corporation that's just going to monetize them.
So is there a pretty loyal following that kind of forms a core there and how do you interact with them?
Yeah, I'm completely amazed and awed and humbled that some people have literally been reading for 25 years
Oof.
and have stuck with me. It's not, hundreds probably of even people, but it's some, and that's just remarkable. And whereas, other people have just found me this season of Survivor and are like, I, can't wait to continue to read your recaps. So yeah, I'm appreciative of wherever they come from. I try to interact as much as I can on social media on those platforms where I am, and then also in the comments on my own site, which are active and especially around certain shows can really have fantastic conversations and a lot of responses. And I really do see what I do when I'm reviewing a show, when I'm recapping a show, when I'm reporting a story as kind of starting a conversation. And here's
Mhm.
what I think, here's my take, here's the information, the facts that I have, and presenting them to the world. And so I'm really excited and interested to hear what people will say back, including like, you're wrong, or I disagree with you, or that's a bad take, and here's why. Like, I love that. And so I think I've always embraced that kind of interaction. Um, Back in the days when Reality Alert started, there were no comments, there was nothing, uh, because that just wasn't built into the infrastructure of the internet. There were message boards, obviously, but most of that took place via email. So I've always been really responsive to people. Like, I tried for years to answer every single email I got. Once spam overtook real people, I obviously stopped that. But for real people, I always respond, and I'm just trying to be the kind of community member that I like in other places. Or if I've reached out to someone who wrote an article, I love hearing back from them, and I try to do the same thing.
I noticed that you have completely open comments, it seems, and which is a lot of people are just terrified of, never, never, never do that. So is that a significant moderation task, or have you kind of developed a self-policing group of loyal people who it just it works that way, or is there a technical aspect to it? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think all of the above, really. When someone posts a new comment, it is held for moderation, and so you have to have an approved comment until before you can just post relentlessly. So that stops scammers immediately. And I also have a plugin for that in WordPress that just basically captures 99.9% of that and gets rid of it. So thankfully, technology handles that the spam part for me. And then, yeah, like when I see a thoughtful or insightful or critical comment, I improve it immediately. And generally, that person will come back. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a drive-by comment from someone found an article. And then I think the community really does uh, kind of self-regulate. There's certainly moments of like kind of disagreement or where we get uh, not necessarily heated, but like have active conversations, and I like that. Um, if I see comments that come in either moderated or, and this is rare, but from somebody who has been posting for a while that has hate speech or something like that, I have a pretty heavy delete hand, and I don't hesitate to just wipe that away because I know that that's what creates a toxic environment. And as soon as people start seeing that, then that's what happens. And if it's somebody that I know or recognize, not know personally, but from the comments, I will reach out to them and let them know, like, this is why your comment's not appearing. And that usually is like a way to kind of
Mhm.
help them understand the effect of what they wrote. But that happens so rarely. And I think it really is like
Right.
people see active conversation. Like, I don't censor like swear words or explicit language like that because I use that in my writing.
Mhm.
And so uh, I think people just feel like they can be themselves, and sort of prevents it from becoming too ugly.
How do you handle the technical side of running a site as an independent publisher?
Yeah, I do pretty much all myself. And I will say that with a giant caveat and asterisk, which is I rely a lot on people who have obviously built WordPress, all the open source community there, tools like PublishPress, which I use multiple ones just on a daily basis. Of course, I have like a host who are people that I know by name and trust, an ad company, etc. So there's a lot of experts and people who are handling a lot of the stuff that sort of allows me to do that day-to-day work. But like I've designed the entire site myself in terms of like the look and feel. And I love getting into the HTML and the CSS and tweaking stuff and teaching myself a little bit of PhD when I can. And I wrote a little plugin recently to have little updates, kind of like my own social media feed. And so I've just done that work and done the coding stuff since I was in high school, really, like kind of playing on the internet, just like making a little web page that said my name on it. It was like, oh my gosh, look, that's, live to the world right now. So I've certainly had experience and lots of practice. At the same time, I would admit that, like, there's no way I could do, like, for example, the work that you all do. Like, that's why I had those plugins, is because I couldn't figure out how to do any of that on my own. And I desperately needed help with that. So I do rely on a lot of people.
You built the whole thing yourself. I think, Dan, you dug in and found the theme and some of the tools used to build this site. Maybe
I just saw that Andy had mentioned that he actually has quite a list of things that he's used in the different WordPress products we're familiar with. Generate Press. That's actually, that's Alberta, the founder behind that theme, kind of sophisticated theme package. I think they do a kind of hosting now. They're in Calgary. So some other older names I've known for a while. Yeah.
We'll put a link in the show notes. That's right. Andy, you've got a list of all the tools you use to keep Reality Blur going.
Yep. And I think, I want to send as much love back as I can to those who've helped me. But yeah, Generate Press is, I built my personal site or moved my personal site to Generate Press a year ago and found it to be so much easier. And and I just use the kind of empty framework because I can customize on top of that. And because I know the kind of look and feel that I want. But I really appreciate their community for solving the little kind of problems or whatever that comes up, which I didn't have as much on my previous frameworks that I was playing with.
So have you expanded your coverage? In recent months, I see true crime on the top of your homepage.
Yeah, actually, so in January of last year, the publication/newsletter called Best Evidence and its two writers joined Reality Blurred and sort of moved their web home, basically, is the best way to say it, to Reality Blurred. So they still send out a newsletter to their subscribers, but they were they were on Substack and decided to leave after the whole explosion last December. And I thought it was like a perfect match. True crime is an area that is very heavy in unscripted TV. There's entire channels devoted to it. Obviously, lots of the Netflix TV shows that are on that top 10 list are true crime, and I rarely cover them, in part because it's not really my thing, and in part because there's just so much of it. So it was a natural fit. But we're kind of like, in terms of expanding, like we consider this kind of a marriage. So should we ever get divorced, they take their stuff, I take my stuff. So we're just kind of, under one roof. Maybe as a better metaphor, it's a farmer's market, and they have a table, and I have a table, and I'm really thrilled to be able to bring their work to my audience and to the web in a way that it wasn't really getting attention as a newsletter.
Oh yeah, there's a very logical connection between true crime and reality TV. And I remember my wife had some of her family over, I think maybe July 4th it was. They were having a conversation, and the topic turned to reality TV and true crime. And all the girls in the family, all the women in the family, immediately said they love true crime. It's just a massive genre for them. They'll watch everything that comes on Netflix about it.
Yeah, it's there's so much, and just there's constantly, obviously, like crimes being committed and things coming up, and so there's more and more content and like just announcements every day about new shows and multiple shows about the same thing. So
An almost endless source of topics.
yes, exactly.
What's the biggest challenge you face right now as an independent publisher?
I think it's probably just finding sources of traffic on today's internet, which I think the big sort of elephant in the room this past year has been Google, which really its updates have really hurt a lot of small independent publishers as they've been trying to weed out all of the people using the system. They've ended up hurting the people who are smaller. I'm not so sure if I've been hit by that as much. Like there's ups and downs, but there's also so many reasons why my traffic goes up and down, from just the type of show that's on, the specific show, the time of year. So it's hard for me to gauge exactly what that is. But I know that search traffic is down in general. And then, of course, most social media sites now are completely suppressing anything with a link in it because they want you to stay on their platform. They don't want you to go to a website and read something. I'm focusing most of my attention on Blue Sky now because it's the opposite. It really is a kind of just live feed of whatever you choose to have your feed look like, and I'm getting much more traffic there. So I would say it's just still a real challenge to think about, like, how do people find my work? And like search was a really major way for people to find it, whether they were looking to answer a question or just looking for coverage. And today's internet is so decentralized and so spread out. It's actually kind of resembling the early internet in many ways, which is interesting. So I'm thinking about like how we can use sort of, and how I can use and think about connections with other writers, publishers, bloggers, et cetera, to kind of network together rather than relying on these companies that are just going to pursue profit. And if it takes some of us to the side, that just happens.
So it sounds like the Fediverse is of interest there. Looking at things like ActivityPub or even like a Mastodon server. Or...
Yeah, so I was actually experimenting a little with ActivityPub, and I'm interested in it, but it was one of those things that like integrating it with WordPress didn't work well, or at least that was beyond my technical ability. And so I want to do more of that. And I love the idea of like this kind of publish once, syndicate everywhere a model. And I really want my website to be that central place. And that kind of happens through RSS right now and some tools that I use. So I love the idea, and it's just like I need to figure out more about it. But I'm on Mastodon as well. It's like I feel like Mastodon doesn't have as many pop culture people on it. It's more techie right now, or at least the server that I'm on. So I think that might just affect the kind of traction that my stuff gets. Whereas Blue Sky seems to be more kind of people coming from Twitter and also just seeking a place where they can talk about stuff, whether it's news or pop culture, in a way that. So that's been a little more successful.
In the WordPress community, we've seen a major move of a lot of the active community over to Blue Sky in the last couple of months. And it is very much a group activity to make these moves because people have all these connections on a particular platform. And if the whole group doesn't move, there's no point in you moving, really.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like, there's still, like, I cover Survivor every week, and a lot of the Survivor contestants are still on Twitter, and a lot of the Survivor commentators have moved to Blue Sky. So there's an interesting kind of like, and it's like I'm like, how do we get everyone else to kind of come over? But you're right. It's like the community kind of has to do that in mass, or it doesn't really have the same impact.
So is Survivor still the £2,000 gorilla of reality TV?
I think in some ways, yeah. Like obviously TV ratings and just the fact that TV is all over the place in terms of where people watch and how they watch now. Survivor is a show that has kept my interest for 25 years, which is rare. And it's also the rare show that's actually been around that long. And then there's still just such an active community around discussing every episode. Like there's huge communities on Reddit, multiple ones that are Survivor focused, and a bunch of us who are bloggers, critics, recappers who cover the show on podcasts and writing and every week. And so it definitely remains strong. There's certainly other shows I know, like in the dating space, like Love is Blind on Netflix is very huge. And then in competition, we have the new season of The Traders coming up in January, which is my new favorite show. So there's definitely like ones I think grabbing for attention, and whether or not they're making more ratings or eyeballs, I'm not quite sure, just because none of that's really measured in objective ways anymore.
You spent what 20 plus years teaching journalism, being a journalism professor. Would you recommend that people follow in your footsteps now? If someone was going to be starting a new blog now, do they have any hope of making it 25 years, or should they be focusing on starting their YouTube channel or their TikTok account instead? What kind of advice do you give to kids nowadays who want to get into journalism?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are it's group. Like, I don't know if I would suggest anyone follow in my footsteps, and probably because it's kind of impossible, both in terms of when I started and where the internet was and where reality TV was back then. I was just incredibly lucky that I started my blog and website the summer that reality TV kind of became a phenomenon in the United States. And that was a wave that I rode for a while, or if not still today. So that is just kind of the thing that's impossible for obviously any of us. I didn't know that I was doing that. It just happened. But that said, I also think that it's just a fantastic time to do journalism, to be a creator on the internet, to be a writer, because there's so many options, like you mentioned, for ways to get to people, to reach people. And I would give the advice and have to students, whether they're in college in their 20s or it's somebody who's just deciding to kind of experiment and play, and they're in their 60s, just to do it and to try it. And the tools make it so easy now to jump in and publish and just see. There's nothing you should let stop you if you want to create. You don't have to have anyone's permission to write. I spent a lot of my early career, even when I was blogging, like pitching editors, pitching publications, trying to get published over and over again, and getting rejected and rejected. That's just part of the process of freelancing, for sure. And that I understand and accept that, but that's not necessary anymore for people to see your work. So I really think it's exciting. It's maybe not the most exciting time to make a full-time living with insurance and 401k to be in journalism. That's the hard part. But maybe this is the one example that I would suggest people follow of mine is, like, I had a day job. I had something else. So my passion, I could do that in the off hours. So, do what you need to do to pay your rent, to feed yourself, etc., to get health insurance. But then also, like, create when you can and whenever you can. And, if somebody is a writer, I would say don't force yourself onto TikTok, because that's not going to go over really well if you don't feel comfortable doing video, right? Whereas if you're now comfortable writing and you love talking to a camera, like, yes, absolutely, YouTube or TikTok are where you should be. So it's all about kind of like what works, I think, for an individual.
You've never dabbled in doing videos or podcasts or adding non-writing channels to Reality Blurred?
No, nothing video related. I did have a 1-year podcast 3 years ago that I'm going to actually relaunch early in 2025, but it was the most low-tech, casual. I literally opened voice memos on my iPhone, took a walk in my neighborhood, and talked about some of the stuff that I've been writing and working on, and then sent that out with my newsletter. I'm going to basically do a version of that, because part of it is I look at podcasts and realize that is an entirely different skill set that I don't have. And I love listening to a lot of them. And so I don't want to try to compete with the amazing reality TV interview podcasts or ones that like tell deeply reported stories, because they're doing that as well. So I'll keep doing what I'm doing well, and just throw my voice out there to see what happens.
You're a writer.
Yes,
first and foremost.
exactly. And that is, I also feel comfortable in a writing space, in part because I can edit myself a little bit. And, obviously I'm comfortable talking to people. I taught for years. I performed improv for about 10 years. So I feel comfortable in front of other people. But when I'm formulating an idea or processing something I've just watched, like, I like to kind of be able to work it, massage it, turn it into something, rather than just say the first thing that comes out of my head, which may or may not be what I end up thinking ultimately.
Final question. We ask this of everyone who comes on the podcast. The blog roll question. Is there someone that you've been reading, someone you've been subscribed to their newsletter perhaps? Is there a really interesting publisher that you're reading online about?
Yeah, I would say that like this question is hard because there's so many great people and a lot of independent media popping up these last few years. It's really exciting. Again, to your question earlier, I think it's an exciting time to create and to do journalism online. But the person I'll shout out is Lex Roman, who writes a newsletter called Journalists Pay Themselves. And I've just come across that in the last 6 months, maybe, and joined up with some of the meetups that Lex does. And they write and produce content that is so actionable for me as a journalist and as a publisher, just thinking about how to engage readers, how to do marketing, growing your newsletter, connecting with readers, getting them to pay you, for example. And just like, I just find not only the content to be really useful, I have a long to-do list of things that I need to do from this newsletter and from the blog post, but also just Lex's presentation from the graphics that you're showing now on the blog to just their writing style. So major shout out, especially if you're in the publishing space. Even if you're not a journalist, even if you're not really looking to monetize your readers at the moment, I think there's a lot to learn from there. So find Lex in the thread.
Oh, so we're recording this in the last couple of weeks of 2024. Is there anything you've learned from him that you're thinking, okay, I should give that a try to see how it works in 2025?
Yeah, I'll say something that I just did that they talked about in a newsletter a few weeks ago, which is just asking readers in a newsletter for money shouldn't happen as part of your newsletter. It should happen separately. And I was super resistant to this and was like, I don't want to just send an email that just asks for money. That feels so awkward. But I tried it and I sent it out and they got 4 people immediately signed up for year-long subscriptions. And I had just 4 unsubscribes, which is maybe 1 or 2 more than a usual newsletter, but like also not that unexpected for that kind of thing. So it was absolutely a success. And I plan to do more of that in 2025 in terms of just like making sure people know what options there are and also just telling people about what I'm doing in ways that are outside of the normal stuff that I'm doing, which is like my normal Friday newsletter, for example.
Okay, so
Nice.
would you call them memberships? What?
Yeah, I think memberships, subscriptions, either of those work. I think I go with subscription just because it kind of fits a little more with the publication idea. But then, and like membership feels a little bit more like you get a lot of stuff that I'm obviously offering content and some perks, but yeah, I guess they're very much interchangeable. Probably just depend upon audience.
I've been rereading the membership puzzle project. Have you ever come across that? That's that might be worth a look. A couple of years back, it's I think 2021. Jay Rosen, familiar with him, old blogger, yeah. So at an NYU, journalism professor, media critic, and former Twitter personality by a long. He's been off that a long time, and others took a look at the more of the traditional journalism and the transition to a membership model as a way to go from people taking your free content for granted, but building that community, kind of like you've done, Andy, and then working towards a high engagement membership funded model. And there's really a lot of good advice in it. There's a whole guide that comes with it. They did studies with many different publications, and based on that, pulled together their best practices there. So I've had it come up with clients. I like recommending it. I think I wrote about it back for Post Status, Steve, when that came out, WordPress World. So yeah, it was a worthwhile piece of resource for you there, maybe.
Awesome. Yeah, I will check it out right after we hang out.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I wish you all the best. As your 25th birthday is coming up in 6 months or so now.
Exactly, yeah.
You
Wow,
getting ready for a big
congratulations.
celebration or a big?
Yeah, some things yet to
Exactly.
be determined. That's kind of what I'm going to use my Wear break to think about is what I want to do to celebrate then.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on making it this far, and I hope you have a lot more fun doing it over the years to come.
Congratulations.
I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you for having me on. And again, thank you for what you built that makes my life easier because it really does.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.